We're going to call the meeting to order. First, we'll do roll call, and then we'll go through introductions. John Bushman.
Here.
Jeffrey Campbell.
Here.
Corey Rodriguez.
Here.
Dan Sheedy.
Sharkey. Here.
Shirky. Okay. Jeffrey Smith.
Here.
I'm Heather Williams, Planning Director and Zoning Administrator. We have Sarah Taylor sitting by the computer. She's the Planning Department Administrative Assistant. She takes minutes at every meeting, and she's also operating the computer. If you can't tell by looking at the screen, but the meetings are broadcast by YouTube live, and they're recorded, and then the recordings are posted on the County Council webpage. So share the meeting with anyone, you can point them to the County Council website, go to the calendar in the left-hand corner and click on the date, and it will show the meetings that were held on that date. That's posted for everyone to view. And then after minutes are taken and approved, then they get posted as well. Jeff Mosey is here also. He's our Deputy Legal Director. That takes care of roll call and introductions. The next item on the agenda is election of officers. According to the ordinances, you are to appoint a chairperson and a vice chair. So at this time, we would entertain nominees for chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's among 5 of you. Step back to
You need a motion.
Nomination.
A nomination. Corey.
Okay. Does anyone second the nomination?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Corey, you are the chairperson.
Congratulations.
Okay. Now, any nominations for co-chair?
I nominate this. I didn't meet you this evening, but next in line.
John Bushman.
John.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. If I could just backtrack for a second for the minutes. The name for the first nomination, it was Dan Shergy, correct?
Yes.
And then the second was
Dan.
Jeff Campbell. For both?
Yeah, Dan again. What's the nomination?
Oh, I just seconded
Yeah.
John.
Second vice chair, and Jeff seconded the chair.
Sarah, did you get all that?
Who did the vice chair? Seconded.
I did.
Who was your name?
Jeff Campbell.
There.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Who was the second on the?
On the chair,
chair.
it was Jeff.
Jeff Smith. We have two Jeffs.
Yes,
Oh,
Jeff
Jeff Smith.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I seconded the chair, Corey.
Very good. Okay, that takes care of the election of officers. The next item is discussion board goals. Just in general, if we have items to discuss and decisions to be made, they need to be listed on the agenda. So I added that just to have a general discussion. If you want to get into any detailed decisions on anything, you'll need to add that to an agenda for the next meeting. I would just add a few points to go over with you. This body is for all zoning ordinances, so I just want to make sure that that was understood. All zoning ordinances within the county, we have 3. We have the Tuscarora District, which you're familiar with. We have the Lindenwold District, which is located across the street from Gabe's, and then into the Martinsburg city limits. It's very small, minimal activity there. And then the airport height, sound, and runway protection zoning ordinance. And that's more extensive. That ordinance is newer. We adopted that in March of 2020. So if you decide you want to evaluate the score district ordinance and maybe make some updates, that airport ordinance would be a good reference point for format and state code requirements. There was a packet that Jeff put together for you for me to hand out. That's on my desk. So I'm going to offer for Jeff to briefly have any conversations with you that you'd like to have, and I'm going to run and grab those.
There's a 30, well, now there's going to be, it's just going to throw out the statistics. I was going to say there's a 33% chance that any person speaking at any time right now is Jeff.
You got that right.
There, did she do it? But anyway, what I prepared is just, I put together the relevant sections from the West Virginia State Code, the Tuscarora zoning ordinance, and the airport ordinance in terms of what talks about what is the Board of Zoning Appeals does and the process and duties and powers and so forth. I didn't print out the window wall because the language for that part is exactly the same as the Tuscarora. I haven't read them from page cover to cover because, you know, I can't sleep at work. But, I'm pretty sure they're almost identical other than the maps. And there's one that also brings me to another thing that the legal director, Anthony Delegated, wanted me to make sure that I mentioned is if there's no actual official role for the Board of Zoning Appeals in the process of changing the zoning ordinances or the maps, but if you were thinking about that, mainly, especially either changing or that you would like to see changes to the ordinances to update them for, you know, anything you see outdated or could be changed, or if you think it would be beneficial in people you know that aren't in the district or any, say, in the Tuscarora district, but they're right beside the boundary and so forth, people who might be interested in expanding one of the zoning districts or whatever. The way to do that, there's two ways to do that. One, the county council could do it on their own petition, or actually, yes, that's right. And then the other way is 50% of the residents who in an affected area, if they vote to, or if they file a petition to change, let's just say the map, for example, then it goes to either the planning commission, depending on the process. If it's not initiated by the county council, it would go to the planning commission first. They would make a recommendation to the county commission or county council rather, and then they would vote on it. Also, there's also, you know, ways that it can be done by election. That's generally, especially if you're talking about amending one, it's not generally the way it's done. That's usually to create a zone or a zoning throughout the county or something like that. It's they have to have an election in certain circumstances. But so I just wanted to mention that to you. It's not actually something that the Board of Zoning Appeals would do itself. But if you're interested in the idea, then obviously your input would be beneficial to getting that, you know, underway. So like I said, I think there's been a lot of talk about the outline of the district and how there's people in the same subdivision that are in and people that are out. And if there was some kind of consensus that, you know, folks in those communities could come to where they could petition county council essentially to modify the boundaries, whether, especially if you're not changing any of the terminology or requirements or anything like that, those would be more controversial, I would think, depending on what they are. But changing the district, people, but it, you know, again, it's up to the people as far as whether they would want to join in and something like that. And then there's public hearing process, so there's opposition to it. You know, there in this last situation, everybody pretty much in the public was on one side of what came up. But it could easily be, if it was looked to expand the boundaries, there'd be people that would be for it, I'm sure, but there could also be other people who are like, I don't want to be. So, there is a public hearing process for the county council. Consider everybody's input. And like I said, it starts, if it came from the public, it would go through the planning commission first, so it's kind of a two-phase thing. And usually, then there's two chances at least for the public's input in the process. So, question.
So if, let's say Mountain Brook Estates, half the people are in the zone and it would require half of the total subdivision to petition to get that started, or would it be the people that aren't in the zone now?
I would say that it would be 50% of the people who want to become part of the,
Okay,
who aren't. So,
I see.
And that's,
Or would it be 50% of the people in the zone district that would have to?
well, I would say no, because when it came to this other petition that came up recently, it was considered that they were 100% of the people in the area to be affected, even though it has other ripple effects on outside that particular area. I think it has to tie directly to the property that's either in or out, basically.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So that would be where, again, if people wanted to support it, they could come to a public hearing and support it. Even if they were already in it, they could come and oppose it and say, right, I don't want everybody in it. I think it's great that we're just us, whatever. I'm not sure. That's probably less likely of a position to take than, more inclusion, but because that then furthers the area that has the same kind of makeup in terms of the rules and so forth. But my opinion is that it would be the people that aren't already part of the zone area that would make up that, at least 50%. Yes.
And if, staying on that topic, if there is an issue about expanding, who takes the initiative in that? Does this board say, we want to consider something like that, or does someone in the community or the council, or
like it would be a petition
made by us?
No, by
Okay.
either the county council or
Okay,
the people that are affected.
okay,
And generally, it's probably going to be something that they're going to need an attorney to help them draw it up and make
Okay.
sure everything, all the boxes are checked. It's not the easiest process in the world, but it's also not one of the more complicated things that we have. So, but yes, it wouldn't be this body.
Okay.
Although, you are free to express your support for something like that as a person, a citizen of the county.
okay.
Yes.
Would, if they did a petition like that, would it be one petition and all the people get together as a group on it, or does each person that
No,
wants to join have
it
to
would be
submit?
a group.
Okay.
I think you would try to get as many people as you could to start with before it was filed. So the numbers, basically. Other questions? All right. And either I or Anthony would generally be here for any of these meetings. So if you have questions about procedure or anything, I gave you some homework to give you a chance to kind of familiarize yourself with the process and all the requirements. There's certain things when you can grant a variance or a special exception. There are times when you must, if it meets certain requirements. There are times when you're not allowed to. And rather than me trying to go over all of this right now, the best thing is just to let you take a look at it on your own time. That's why I included before the section on Board of Zoning Appeals, the section on special exceptions in the Tuscarora ordinance, because that is something that would be granted by, if they were granted, or they would be considered by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if somebody applies for special exception, there's a process that includes it ends with the Board of Zoning Appeals ultimately making a decision. And one thing I just want to point out at the very beginning, so you always have it in your mind, is anytime there's a decision of the board like that, whether it's to approve or deny something, you will need to ultimately have a written decision that includes findings in terms of specifically what factors led to the decision. Okay.
As individuals?
Well, no, as a
group?
body.
Okay.
So, and like I said, Anthony and I can also help with crafting the official, written opinion, but it's also best to have as many of those things stated on the record, when it's ultimately voted on. So, anything else? We don't have really much for you to do yet, so.
Okay.
So you can have some time to read these things.
So before we adjourn, I just wanted to give you an update. We currently don't have any projects that have been submitted to the planning department that require a consideration of an appeal for any company. There was the one project for the Steptoe property that prompted all the conversation and discussions. Last time I spoke to the owner regarding that project, they were planning to design it fully in compliance with the Tuscarora zoning ordinance and not even have a request for variance. So that may just come through similar to other projects that I've reviewed that only require a comparison to the ordinance to make sure it meets the requirements, and then you would never even need to get together because there's no request for it. If we do get a project, then we will contact you and then we'll schedule a time to meet. If we don't receive any projects before the end of the year, the next meeting might be January to reconvene to reappoint the chair and co-chair. And then we would do that once a year. So it's not a lot of a time commitment. So it just requires updated phone lists, emails. So if anything changes on that information, I pulled emails and phone numbers from the email that Anthony had where we did the invite and we confirmed that all of you would be able to attend. So if you can just double check that and make sure those phone numbers are accurate. Emails appear to be good because you're all here. And that's all I have. So if we have a motion to adjourn.
In public, is it possible that we can probably make it
Yeah, we could do that because
the official amount?
just a brief comment. Yes.
We're not all dressed up and know where to go. And my sincere apology to, break the norm here. But let me introduce myself for those who don't know me. I'm Joseph Bowers. I'm the HOA president for Chateau. I spoke with Anthony Delgado yesterday. He highly suggested that I attend this meeting today. I have been working on a relative initiative that you guys were speaking of today, and that is rezoning in the Tuscarora Valley. After the smoke settled from the Steptoes rezoning, I spoke with the Copenhagen, and we were really concerned about carrying it to the next level, and carrying it to the next level translates to, well, let's see if we can fix the rezoning now, because as it appears right now, some of my neighbors' homes and property are partially in the zone, and some are partially out of the zone. That's a little nonsense, to have your front yard in the zone and your backyard on the pool. And I came and met with Mr. Delgado once again to discuss this. He says, out in my area, I might be interested in that as well. So at my home, we gathered last month. We, as a member of the HOA presidents, Amanda Malcolm out at Mountain Brook, Nicholas Antonetti in Mill Point, Scott McBoy in Lower Sheriff's Lane, and a few others over at Lost Colony. And we were thinking on the path of maybe we can sort of blanket this thing, but with the factor of not zoning ourselves in where you can't have the right type of professional business in the area. But we were concerned about rezoning in the Tuscarora region so that we won't have to go through hurdles and feel somewhat more protected than what our covenants and restrictions would allow. It's the covenants and restrictions that are in place are good, but that's not hard and concrete when it comes to a zoning issue. It's somewhat different. You don't have the same level of protection there. And so a lot of the residents were very concerned. So I got my board of directors together and we did an assessment of those who were fully in my community alone, those who were partially in, and those who were not in the zone at all. And I have all three flavors within Chateau Gate out of 73 residents. We would like to fix that. We truly would. For some of you may know that we did retain the council during the Steptoes debacle when we were talking about rezoning, and it was costly. And we, like any other community, we have a desire to treat our residents' homeowners association dues tenderly. And to go out and retain counsel is huge. Just for a phone call or an email to them, that's cost. We're willing to do that if we have to, but we feel that, and when I say we, the other presidents of HOAs feel as though there are strength in numbers. And if we come together sensibly and join together and says, yes, Mill Point has a desire to do that. Lost Colony has a desire to do it. Chateau Gate has a desire to do it. Mountain Brook has a desire to do it. All these HOA residents, we're putting together strategies right now and having discussions in order to bring up and introduce to this chamber a sensible request to get rezoned in that area so that we're better protected. So that's what we're working on now, and the details that you provided, this gentleman provided today, Anthony's deputy, is very helpful, because that's the one question that we solicited to Anthony. Hey, check with the council, see, is it necessary? Can we do this with petition only, or is it gonna be cost? And if it's gonna be cost, well, we would sort of like to divvy in out of the other HOAs to help us with this council cost to retain the council. So those are things that we're looking at, things that just make common sense. And we're looking for a little guidance before we go into it. So that's my purpose for shoot from my office in Baltimore today to try to get here, just to convey those words to you. That we have a desire to do it. We have a desire to do it right. And with a little bit of directions from you guys and folks like Anthony, I think we can get there. And if we can get there at cost, it would be very helpful to us. It would be great. So that's what we're coming from.
Can I ask one question or not?
Well, it's not, this wasn't really on the agenda.
Okay.
So I'd rather you just have a private conversation.
Okay.
And I'm respectful of that too.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was over there counting months. My legal counsel told me that we need to meet quarterly rather than annually, even if there's nothing to consider. consider it. So if we're currently in September, October, November, December would be the next quarter. So I'll reach out to you and see what we can do.
You guys are good. You're reading my mind.
Yeah.
I was going to answer that question. One time a year, really? Okay.
And we'll, maybe we can also include a time at the end of each quarter, especially if there's not anything on the agenda. We should consider the public comments. Generally, good practice.
Okay. I believe now we're ready for a motion.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you again for all of you.
Thank you guys.